The story about the Langston will estate that turned the family upside down with lies, betrayal, and plot against each other in the family. It seems very typical of rich families, but for the Langston is much more emotional and dark side. The Langston estate stood like a relic from another century, stone walls streaked with ivy, iron gates creaking in the rain, and an atmosphere so heavy it made breathing feel like sin. Inside, the warmth of antique chandeliers couldn't melt the cold that seeped into the bones of the mourners gathered there. The death of Frederick Langston had brought them together, but not in grief. No, grief was private. What they brought was hunger. Power was in the air, thick, bitter, and expensive. Elena Langston had always been the outlier in her family, the black-haired girl who painted in silence while the others dined on blood and inheritance. Today, she wore a dress of black satin that clung to her like shadow. She didn't speak much. Her silence was armor. Her presence, however, was impossible to ignore. She stood by the window, watching the rain stroke the glass, her fingers tracing the condensation as if drawing a secret. "You look more like your mother every year." The voice was smooth, masculine, deep, and laced with something venomous. Julian Langston, the golden boy, her half-brother, firstborn, power-drunk, and always hungry for more. She turned. "And you look more like father every day. That should terrify you." He smirked. It didn't touch his eyes. "You've grown bold. And you've always mistaken cruelty for charisma." Julian stepped closer. Too close. He smelled of tobacco, expensive cologne, and ambition. He reached out and gently tucked a stray curl behind her ear. The intimacy was theatrical, a dominance play. It made her skin crawl. "Elena, when this is over, you'll need someone to guide you. The Langston name is heavy and dangerous." She slapped his hand away, slowly, deliberately. "You mean you'll need someone to control. That's what you really mean." Their eyes locked. A decade of tension twisted silently between them. Something unspoken, ugly, and possibly mutual. The lawyer arrived. The family filed into the library, wood-paneled, silent, and suffocating with the scent of secrets and old money. Portraits of dead Langstons stared down, watching the next generation feed on each other. Gerald Klein, Frederick's lifelong lawyer, adjusted his glasses with shaking fingers. He was pale, nervous. He cleared his throat. "Mr. Langston left behind a revised will. It is dated 3 months before his passing." A pause. All movement stopped. Julian's voice sliced through. "Revised? I wasn't informed of any revision." Klein didn't blink. "That was intentional. The contents were confidential. Mr. Langston was cautious of how it would be received." Julian laughed bitterly. "He knew I was the rightful heir." Klein looked at Elena. "In this final will, Frederick Langston names Elena Langston as the sole heir to the estate." For a moment, it was like no one could breathe. Then chaos. Aunt Margaret gasped. Cousin Rachel stood. Someone cursed under their breath, but Julian didn't move. His face was still, blank. Then he turned to Elena. "I see," he said quietly. "You finally played the long game." Elena blinked. "I didn't even know." "Oh, don't insult me," he snapped. "The forgotten daughter suddenly becomes the queen of the castle. You must have been whispering in his ear for months. Did you cry for him? Paint his portrait? Or did you get in his bed too, like your mother?" The slap this time wasn't from Elena. It came from Isla, their estranged cousin, who'd always hated Julian and loved drama. "You vile bastard!" she hissed. Julian ignored her. His eyes never left Elena. His rage was too controlled. It wasn't just about money. It was personal. Elena stood tall now, voice even. "I didn't ask for this, but I'm not giving it up either." Julian's voice lowered into a whisper. "You'll regret that." Shadows in the hallway. The night. The rain thickened into a storm. Elena wandered the hallways of the mansion alone. Her heels echoed on marble. The portraits of dead ancestors watched her like judges. She stopped before Frederick's study. The door was ajar. Inside, the fire was still burning. Strange. The room was untouched since his death, and locked. She stepped inside. On the desk, a photograph she'd never seen her and Frederick when she was 12. He was holding her, smiling, real. Behind her, the door creaked. She turned. Julian stood in the doorway, a drink in hand, shirt unbuttoned at the top, hair wet from the rain. He looked like the ghost of a storm. "You shouldn't be in here," he said. "I could say the same." "You're playing a dangerous game, Elena." "No, you are. You always have been." He stepped forward slowly. The heat between them shifted, became sharper, more electric. Too many nights of buried thoughts. Too many words never said. "Do you really think he loved you more?" Julian whispered. "Do you really believe he changed that will because of love?" "I don't know," she said. "But whatever the reason, it wasn't you." Julian stared at her. Then slowly, cruelly, he smiled. "You have no idea what he did, Elena. No idea what he was hiding." She narrowed her eyes. "Then tell me." He took another step. "I'd rather show you." And with that, he dropped something on the desk, an old envelope sealed in wax. "From our father," he said, "to be opened. If something ever happened to him, and trust me, something did." He turned and left. Elena stared at the envelope, her heart pounding. Behind her, the fire crackled louder. Or was that her blood? The letter from the grave? Elena stared at the envelope. The red wax seal bore the Langston crest, the serpent wrapped around a dagger. Her fingers trembled as she broke it open. Inside was a single sheet of thick paper, written in Frederick Langston's exacting, calculated handwriting. "If you are reading this, I am already dead. If Elena holds this, then I have trusted her. But trust, in this family, is poison. Julian is not what he seems, and neither am I. There is a reason I changed the will. Elena, they will come for you. Your name, your mind, your body, your very soul. You must become everything I was too weak to be." The safe holds everything. Combination, July 4th, 19. Burn this after reading. She read it 3 times, then folded it slowly. Her mind spun. She knew about the safe in his private chamber, always locked, always forbidden. But the line about Julian, it clung to her like frostbite. Julian is not what he seems. The door creaked. She froze. Julian stood in the doorway again, half drunk, his tie undone, his eyes darker than before. He had a way of slipping into rooms without making a sound, like a predator in silk. "Well?" he asked, stepping closer. "What did Daddy dearest leave you?" Elena tucked the letter into her dress, between her skin and her bra. "Nothing that concerns you." He tilted his head, amused by her defiance. "Oh, but everything concerns me now. You inherited my kingdom." He reached for the bourbon decanter on the shelf and poured himself 2 fingers. "So tell me, Elena, do you actually think you earned it?" She turned to him. And what exactly did you do to earn it, Julian? Run his business into lawsuits? Cheat on your wife with the housekeeper? Or maybe blackmail one of his lawyers? His smirk vanished. I could ruin you, he said quietly. She stepped closer. You already tried. Remember that summer when you told Father I stole the ring from Mother's drawer? You watched him drag me out of the room by my wrist? I was 15. Julian blinked. Something flickered across his face. A ghost of guilt? Or arousal? You were always so dramatic, he said. She moved in, just inches from him now, her voice low. And you were always afraid I'd become smarter than you. The safe. That night, while the storm howled outside, Elena slipped into her father's master study. She used the code, July 4th, 19. Click. Inside the safe, there were 3 things. A thick red journal, a sealed envelope labeled Isla, a USB drive marked Julian 2018. She grabbed them all. She opened the journal first. It was filled with notes. Frederick's observations of his children. Notes on Julian's manipulation. Affairs, possibly even illegal business dealings. Paragraphs about how Elena had been the only one with any sense of conscience. The pages were cold, clinical, like dissection logs, but one entry made her freeze. If Julian ever discovers the truth about his mother, he will destroy this family. Seduction and surveillance. 2 days later, Elena sat in the drawing room. Rain again. Always rain now. Julian walked in wearing black slacks, unbuttoned shirt, and a scowl. He sat across from her and lit a cigarette. I want to talk about a deal, he said. I'm not selling anything. No, but you might be persuaded to share. She laughed. Share? The man who called me a whore 2 nights ago wants me to play nice? Julian stood and crossed to her. He bent down, face close. Elena, you're not a child anymore, and I can see what kind of woman you've become. You could be dangerous, if you wanted to be. The air between them charged, inappropriate, magnetic, decades of psychological warfare now laced with dark, sensual tension. He touched her wrist, just lightly. I could show you how to use that power, he whispered. She jerked away. Get out! But he didn't move. You think this is about the will? It's bigger than that. Father was hiding things, and so are you now. She stared at him. You'll get nothing from me. Oh, I will, he said softly. One way or another. That night, she had the USB drive scanned on her laptop. Footage, surveillance, Julian, hotel room, a screaming woman, a cash transaction. Her face blurred, but her voice was clear. You said you'd take care of it, that no one would ever find out. Elena covered her mouth. Julian had paid someone off, possibly blackmailed them, possibly worse. Then the worst realization hit her. The woman on the USB sounded like Isla's secret. Elena found Isla in the greenhouse, tending to orchids, like always. The air was humid, the plants surreal. I need to ask you something, Elena said. Isla turned. Her usual glamour faded into something raw. You've been digging, haven't you? I found a video with Julian. You were there. Isla went pale. Elena stepped closer. What did he do to you? Isla looked away. He didn't do anything. I did, and I'll die before I let it come out. Isla, no, Isla snapped, her eyes glistening. You think you're winning this war, but you don't know what's beneath the surface. Frederick lied to all of us, and Julian? He didn't become a monster alone. She stormed out, heels crunching the gravel path, leaving Elena alone with 100 blooming flowers and a heart racing with confusion. Blood in the water. That night, someone broke into Elena's bedroom. The USB was gone. She woke up to the closet door slightly ajar. Her safe moved, the sheets beside her still warm, and on her vanity mirror, drawn in red lipstick, were 4 words: "Truth has a price." She looked in the mirror. Behind her, the family was circling, like sharks, and she was bleeding now. The mother's sins, letters from a dead woman. Elena returned to her father's journal. Between the pages, folded and hidden, she found 3 letters, handwritten and brittle, all signed by Vivienne Langston, her late mother. Each letter was addressed to Frederick, but what they revealed shattered every truth Elena thought she knew. You never told him. You never had the courage. You let him grow up believing he was your son, when we both know he isn't. If he ever finds out the truth, that his real father was your brother Malcolm, you know what he'll do? Julian was born of something unholy, a night that should have never happened, a sin I've spent every day paying for. Elena dropped the page. Her breath vanished. Julian wasn't Frederick's son. He was the result of a drunken, abusive night between Vivienne and Malcolm Langston, the family's exiled brother who died mysteriously in '89. Suddenly, everything changed. The favoritism, the cruelty, the tension between Julian and Frederick, the paranoia in Vivienne's eyes all those years ago. And now, Elena understood why Frederick rewrote the will, why Julian was kept close but never trusted. He was a reminder of everything Frederick despised, and everything Vivienne had never forgiven herself for. Julian's seduction. Julian found Elena in the wine cellar that night. She was seated on a velvet chaise, drinking blood-red Bordeaux by candlelight, the flickering shadows playing on her skin. "I thought I might find you here," he said. "You always know where the bodies are buried, don't you?" she replied without looking up. He stepped closer. "You've been distant. Maybe I'm tired of pretending." Julian crouched beside her, one hand sliding along the armrest of the chaise, his other lightly brushing her ankle. "You know, I've been thinking about the 2 of us, the tension, the games." "They're not games," she whispered. "Not anymore." His voice dropped, velvet over razor wire. "You feel it too, don't you? This pull, this fire. We're not like them, Elena. We've always been different." She turned her face toward him, their lips just inches apart. "We're broken, and we've been feeding on each other for years." His hand slid higher on her thigh. "And maybe that's exactly what we need." She didn't stop him, but just before their mouths touched, she whispered, "Your real father was Malcolm Langston." Julian froze. He blinked, pulled back slowly, and stared at her. "You're lying." "I wish I was." Silence. His chest rose and fell, but his face remained eerily blank. "Get out," he said. "No." He stood. "Get out." She rose, face flushed. "I'm not scared of you." "You should be," he said, voice cold. "Because now I don't just want what's mine. I want to burn everything." The death in the garden. 2 days later, Cousin Rachel was found dead in the garden pond, face down, drowned. They said she had been drinking, that she'd wandered out at night, slipped, and hit her head. But Elena knew better. Rachel had once confessed, in a drunken whisper during dinner, that she'd helped Julian cover something up years ago, something about a girl, a fire, a threat, and now Rachel was gone. Isla was hysterical. Aunt Margaret retreated to her room with sedatives. Julian barely reacted. Elena stared at his hands during the wake. They didn't shake. The vision of Vivian. The night Elena dreamed of her mother. Vivian, standing in the old nursery, dressed in white silk, holding a baby, a boy with cold eyes. "You should leave this place," her mother whispered, "before it eats you." "I can't," Elena said. Vivian wept. "Then bury him, before he buries you." Elena woke in a cold sweat. The sheets tangled, her nightgown damp. Outside her window, someone stood watching. When she threw it open, no one was there. Only the wind and the sound of the grandfather clock chiming 3. The pact of shadows. At dawn, Elena found Isla in the chapel. "I need your help," she said. "Why now?" Isla asked, tear-streaked and pale. "Because Rachel didn't drown. She was silenced." Isla nodded once. "Then let's dig." They formed a pact, blood sisters, finally aligned, but Isla had one condition. "If we do this, you tell me everything your father left behind, even the things about me." Elena hesitated, then nodded. As they walked back into the mansion, they didn't notice the camera, tucked behind the hallway vase, blinking silently. Recording. The hidden files. At 3 a.m., Elena and Isla sat in the candlelit study. The USB drive was finally decrypted. The files inside were encrypted journal entries, videos, and surveillance data, all compiled by Frederick. One file was labeled Julian Sins 2018. They watched in silence. Footage. A girl, late teens, blonde, frantic, crying. Julian calm, shirtless, pouring her a drink. She whispers, "I thought you loved me." He replies, "I told you what would happen if you said anything." She tries to leave. He grabs her. The screen goes black. Then, a grainy security image of a fire breaking out at an old lakeside house. The girl was never found. Police called it a runaway case. Isla stood. "That's my friend. Her name was Talia. She disappeared the summer Julian came back from rehab." Elena whispered, "You knew?" "I suspected, but he threatened to expose something about me, about my addiction, my past. He said no one would believe a pill-popping slut over the golden sun." Elena clenched her fists. "He can't get away with this." Isla looked at her, voice ice cold. "Then we ruin him from the inside." The almost kiss. That evening, Julian cornered Elena in the smoking parlor. "You've been busy," he said, "playing detective, making alliances." She sipped her wine. "You're scared. That's new." He stepped forward, slow and deliberate, eyes locked on hers. "I'm not scared. I'm aroused." She didn't move as he came closer. His cologne like poison and memory. His voice was a murmur. "You and I were always fire and glass, cut each other, burned each other. But maybe that's the only way we ever felt alive." He touched her waist. She didn't stop him. "Say it, Elena," he whispered. "Say you want me." For one long, blistering moment, she nearly did. But then she whispered, "You were never Frederick's son." Julian's smile cracked. "What?" "You're Malcolm's, born of violence. That makes you nothing but a bastard product of incest and betrayal." His hand dropped from her body. "You're lying. I have the letters. I have the proof. You were the secret, the curse." He stared at her, devastated and furious. Then he laughed, a cold, broken sound. "So that's what this is. You want revenge." She stepped close, whispering against his lips. "I want justice, and I want you to rot." The ambush funeral. Rachel's funeral was a cold, gray affair. Black umbrellas, sobbing aunts, a priest who mispronounced her name. As the family gathered at the crypt, a car rolled up. Out stepped a man in his 40s, sharp suit, arrogant smirk. Damian Langston, the cousin exiled to Europe years ago after an embezzlement scandal. No one had heard from him since. Now he was back, and carrying a thin, leather briefcase. "Cousins," he said smoothly, "I come bearing a final gift. A copy of a will, but not Frederick's. Malcolm's." Julian froze. Isla blinked. Elena narrowed her eyes. Damien opened the briefcase. Inside were photographs, signed statements, and a confession written by Malcolm before his death. It detailed the night he raped Vivian, how he watched Julian grow up from afar, how he used that knowledge to blackmail Frederick, how he warned that Julian would grow up to destroy them all. Everyone stared in horror. Julian backed away slowly. "No," he whispered. "This is fake. All of it." But his voice cracked, and in that moment, he looked small, fractured, a boy, not a monster, until he punched Damien in the jaw, breaking it, and then disappeared. Descent. That night, Elena walked into Julian's abandoned bedroom. The walls were stripped, the drawers emptied. But there was one thing left on the bed, a single photograph of her and Julian, as children, holding hands, on the back scribbled in red ink, "We were happy until you betrayed me." Later, a staff member confessed Julian had booked a train out of town. No one knew where. But Elena knew this wasn't the end. The pact deepens. In the darkened study, Elena poured wine for Isla. "We need to finish what we started," she said. "I have the files. You have the network. We can expose him." "Not just him," Elena said. "Frederick, Malcolm, the entire Langston legacy, all of it is poisoned. It needs to burn." Isla raised her glass. "Then let's light the match." They clinked glasses. Outside, lightning cracked. Inside, the daughters of a cursed dynasty prepared to salt the earth their fathers had built. The return. Elena awoke to thunder crashing against the stained glass windows of the estate. The mansion felt heavier, like it was holding its breath. Julian had been gone for 10 days, until now. He returned on the night of the storm, soaked, gaunt, eyes darker than night. But he wasn't alone. With him came Celeste, a hauntingly beautiful woman with porcelain skin, violet eyes, and a calm, cryptic smile. "Who is she?" Isla hissed. Julian answered, voice low and cold. "She's my salvation, or my executioner, depending on how this ends." Celeste was Malcolm's bastard daughter from another affair. Julian had tracked her down, told her everything. She had as much claim to the Langston legacy as any of them, and she wanted blood. Truths meant to stay buried. In a final confrontation in the drawing room, Elena stood across from Julian, Isla, and Celeste, all ghosts of a poisoned dynasty. Julian stepped forward, whispering, "You want the truth? Here's one more." He pulled a small envelope from his coat. Inside, a DNA test result from an anonymous lab. Elena Langston wasn't Frederick's daughter either. She wasn't even a Langston. Vivienne had lied again. Elena had been fathered by a young piano tutor Vivienne once seduced out of vengeance after the rape. "You never had a rightful claim to anything," Julian hissed. "You're just a servant's mistake." But Elena didn't break. "No," she said, stepping closer. "I'm the only clean blood in this house. That's why your father hated you. And that's why I'll finish what Frederick started." The fire. That night, Elena and Isla sent out the files to every lawyer, press outlet, and Langston-connected investor in the country. Within hours, the family empire collapsed. Fraud, rape, secret heirs, a corrupted will. A legacy imploded. Julian watched it all burn from the West Wing window. "You think you've won," he said, approaching Elena one last time. "I didn't come to win," she whispered. "I came to end it." "I still love you," he said. "I believe you," she replied. Then she kissed him, soft, deep, almost gentle, and stabbed him in the stomach. He fell to the floor with a grunt. Elena didn't flinch. "You took my childhood, my mother, my mind. I'm just taking balance." The ruin. Elena and Isla set fire to the Langston estate. The flames licked up the wood-paneled halls, devouring oil paintings, antique books, velvet chairs. The past. They watched it all burn from the garden, rain mixing with ash in their hair. Celeste stood silently beside them, holding a violin. She played a slow, sorrowful tune as screams echoed from within. Julian was still inside. No one tried to save him. The aftermath. 6 months later. Elena now lives in a quiet cottage by the coast. She writes, anonymously, about female rage and rebirth. No one knows her real name. Isla checked into rehab. She's sober now, stronger. Celeste vanished. Some say she married a Russian diplomat. Others say she's hunting the remaining Langston trustees. No bodies were ever recovered from the estate fire. Some claim Julian survived, that he's out there, watching. Elena doesn't care. If he comes for her again, she'll be ready. Because when the will changed, everything. She changed too. 2 years later, Vertical Bar A psychiatric clinic in Switzerland. The Langston fire was declared accidental. The family fortune had splintered into lawsuits and offshore vaults. Elena's book, published under a pseudonym, became a bestseller, hailed as a survivor's poetic scream. But deep in the Alps, under an assumed name, in a white-walled room that smelled of disinfectant and decay, a man sat across from a mirror. His face was burned, just slightly. His left hand trembled, though the right was steady. In his lap sat a leather journal with a crimson ribbon. The nurse entered. "Mr. Vale, your therapy session is in 10. He nodded once. "Yes, thank you." After she left, he opened the journal. Inside were photos. Elena, Isla, Celeste, all torn at the corners. One had a red X across it. Then he whispered to himself, "They thought fire would kill me, but I was always made of ash." In the mirror, Julian smiled. And the story wasn't over. Maybe other stories will follow suits.